Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating concept that completely flips how we usually think about wealth. We are breaking down the core ideas from Robert Kiyosaki's absolute classic, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The goal here? To see if we can totally rewire our mindset from working for money to actually making money work for us. All right, let's just jump right in.
So picture this. You have two fathers, and they live wildly, vastly different lives. One was a highly educated PhD who went to Stanford and Northwestern, yet he sadly died leaving a pile of unpaid bills behind. The other, an 8th grade dropout who ended up leaving tens of millions of dollars to charities and his family. The educated man was Robert's biological father, his poor dad. The dropout was his best friend's father, his rich dad. Now, both of these guys worked incredibly hard. Both earned really good incomes, yet their financial fates literally couldn't have been more different. So, why is that?
Well, it all starts right here, with their daily habits and mindsets. The poor dad habitually used the phrase, "I can't afford it." But the rich dad, he absolutely forbade those words. Instead, he constantly asked, "How can I afford it?" And what's genuinely fascinating is the profound effect these two simple phrases have on your brain. You see, "I can't afford it" is a statement. It essentially puts your brain to sleep. It's a sign of mental laziness. But how can I afford it? That's a question. It forces your brain to wake up, get some exercise, and actively hunt for solutions.
Now, these totally opposite mindsets bled into their entire worldviews, especially when it came to politics and government. One dad believed the rich should pay more in taxes to take care of the less fortunate. The other firmly believed that taxes punish those who produce and reward those who don't. And hey, just to be clear, in this explainer, we aren't taking a side on who is politically right or wrong here. We are strictly analyzing the specific philosophy of the rich dad to understand exactly how he built his tremendous wealth.
Section 1. Escaping the rat race. To really teach Robert about money, his rich dad put the 9-year-old to work dusting canned goods for a whopping 10 cents an hour. This miserable little job forced him to confront a trap that almost everyone falls into, the rat race. You know how it goes. It starts with fear, that perfectly normal, everyday human fear of not having enough money to pay the bills. So what do? You go to work. Then you get a paycheck, and the second emotion kicks in right on cue. Desire, or greed, for all the shiny things money can buy. So you spend it. And then, yep, the fear returns. Work, earn, spend, repeat. Basically, your emotions are doing all the thinking for you.
Rich Dad had this great analogy for it. He compared it to a donkey dragging a heavy cart, endlessly chasing a carrot dangling from a stick held by its owner. The owner gets to go wherever he wants, but the donkey is just chasing a total illusion. For millions of people out there, money is literally that carrot. We chase raises, we chase job security, bigger paychecks, completely blind to the fact that we're just pulling the cart.
So, to break the boys out of this illusion, Rich Dad did something crazy. He eventually took away their 10 cents an hour and made them work for absolutely nothing. Zero. He really wanted them to internalize this powerful, paradigm-shifting idea. The poor and the middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them. Think about it. If you take a job strictly for a paycheck, you are working for money. But the moment you work for free, your mind is suddenly forced to start looking for other opportunities. And you know what? That mental exercise actually worked. The boys noticed that the store manager was throwing away old, unsold comic books, so they negotiated to keep them. They then opened a comic book library right in a basement, hired Mike's sister to be the librarian, and charged the neighborhood kids 10 cents for admission. Boom. They started generating $9.50 a week. They had effectively created a real business that made them money even when they weren't physically sitting there. They had taken their first step out of the rat race.
Section 2. Assets versus Liabilities.
Okay, this concept is basically the absolute bedrock of financial literacy. The crucial thing to understand here is that it's not about how much money you make. It is entirely about how much money you keep. Rich Dad used this fantastic visual analogy. If you're going to build the Empire State Building, what's the very first thing you have to do? You dig a massive, deep hole and pour a ridiculously strong foundation, right? But if you're just building a house out in the suburbs, a 6-inch slab of concrete will do just fine. The problem is, people who try to get rich quick without any financial literacy are essentially trying to build the Empire State Building on a 6-inch slab. It eventually just turns into the Leaning Tower of suburbia.
So, how exactly do you build that deep foundation? Well, it starts with understanding rule number 1. Rich Dad loved the KISS principle. Keep it super simple.
You can totally forget all that complex accounting jargon. An asset is simply something that puts money in your pocket. That's it. Whether you're working or sleeping, an asset generates cash flow that comes right to you.
And on the flip side, we have the liability. A liability is just something that takes money out of your pocket. End of story. It doesn't matter what the dictionary says or what some banker tries to tell you. It is purely about the direction of the cash flow. If it feeds you, it's an asset. If it bleeds you, it's a liability.
When you map out how this actually plays out in the real world, the light bulb really turns on. Look at the typical middle-class cash flow pattern. Income comes in from a salary, and it almost immediately goes right back out to pay expenses and fund liabilities. We're talking cars, credit cards, big mortgages. The middle class habitually buys liabilities that they mistakenly think are assets. The rich, however, they direct their income straight into the asset column, and then those assets generate the income that pays for their fund and their expenses.
Which brings us to a highly emotional and frankly controversial realization for a lot of people. Quote, "My house is a liability, and if your house is your largest investment, you're in trouble." Look, logically speaking, a primary residence takes money out of your pocket every single month. You've got the mortgage, property taxes, insurance, general upkeep. It is, by definition, an expense. If literally all your wealth is tied up in your house, you miss out on acquiring true assets that actually put money back into your pocket. Section 3. Mind your own business.
It's kind of crazy, but we spend our entire lives minding someone else's business. We work for a boss to make them rich. We work for the government by paying our taxes, and we work for the bank by paying off our mortgage. To really illustrate this, let's ask the same totally unexpected question that McDonald's founder Ray Kroc once posed to a group of MBA students. What business are you in? Think about it for a second. If you say, "Oh, I'm a banker," well, do you actually own the bank? No, right? You just work there. So when those MBA students laughed and told Ray Kroc that he was obviously in the hamburger business, he corrected them. His profession was selling hamburger franchises, sure, but his actual business was real estate. McDonald's is actually one of the largest owners of real estate in the entire world. It's an incredible revelation when you finally realize that your profession is simply what you do for a paycheck. That's your income column. But your business, your true business, is your asset column.
So what does your actual business look like? What are true assets? We're talking about things like income-generating real estate, stocks, bonds, royalties from intellectual property like patents or music, and businesses that run completely fine without requiring your physical presence. Now, the strategy here isn't to just quit your job tomorrow. Keep your day job for sure. Be a fantastic employee, but aggressively, consistently build that asset column on the side. And how do you know when you're actually succeeding? Like, how do you measure wealth? Hint, it's not by your net worth, because that's often inflated by personal items like your car or your TV. Rich Dad adopted Buckminster Fuller's really fascinating definition of wealth. Let's say your number is 30. That means 30 days of survivability. Wealth is measured in time, not just dollars. If you stopped working today, right now, how many days could you survive strictly on the cash flow generated from your assets? When your asset cash flow finally surpasses your monthly living expenses, congratulations, you are officially wealthy.
Section 4. The history of taxes and corporations. Once you start generating real wealth, you really need to understand how the system is actually structured. Rich Dad had a very specific historical view on this whole thing, which he called the Robin Hood fantasy. He argued that the general public was initially sold on the idea of permanent income taxes because they were told it was just a way to punish the ultra-rich and give back to the poor. However, according to the book, once the government's appetite for money grew, those taxes eventually expanded to heavily burden the exact same people who voted for them, the middle class.
Meanwhile, the rich found a totally legal way to bypass the heaviest burdens, and they did it through corporations. Now, a corporation isn't necessarily a massive skyscraper with a company logo on it. Often, it's just a legal document sitting in an attorney's filing cabinet. But notice the mechanical difference here. An employee earns money, gets taxed on that money immediately, and then tries to survive on whatever is left over. A corporation, however, earns money, spends everything it possibly can on business expenses, and is only taxed on whatever is left over at the very end. It's a massive legal advantage. Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway from this entire philosophy. Money without financial intelligence is money soon gone. You could literally hand a person $1 million today, but if their mental cash flow pattern is wired to spend everything they have on liabilities, they will eventually end up flat broke. Building wealth isn't just a physical grind at a 9-to-5 job. It is a lifelong, active, mental exercise in financial literacy. So, I really want to leave you with this provocative final thought. Take a hard look at your own balance sheet today. If you stopped working today, how many days forward could you actually survive? Let that question sit with you for a bit. Let it spark the desire to start minding your own business, to stop mindlessly chasing the carrot, and to start building your own asset column today. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep exercising that